Hey everybody, it's spooky season, and what better time than Halloween to take a deep dive look at the horror franchise Halloween? So let's go ahead and get right into it. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. I'm your host, Professor Victor, and usually we'd be going through all of the essential, noteworthy, and interesting and notorious modern horror films, but today we're doing something a little bit different. If you're new, though, go check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it tells you all of what we're usually about and what we usually do here in terms of looking at different subgenres of horror. But today, what we're doing is looking at a specific franchise of horror, namely the Halloween franchise. The Halloween franchise is one of the most iconic horror franchises of all time. And if you saw our Slasher Icons video, you had me talk about the original Halloween movie and the original slasher icon of Michael Myers. And in that video, I indicated that perhaps in the future, I'd be looking at a little bit of taking a deeper look or a closer look at the sequels in that franchise because I didn't do it in that video. And this is us doing that now. As you guys might remember, last year we did the same thing with the Friday the 13th franchise for the slasher icon Jason Voorhees. So now we're finally getting to Michael Myers, and with any luck, we'll do Freddy Krueger next year. but right now we're looking at Michael Myers. We're looking at the franchise of Michael Myers, and sometimes we won't be looking at Michael Myers, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now, there is a ton of material out there about Halloween documentaries, YouTube videos, books, articles. There's a lot of stuff out there to explain pretty much every aspect of Halloween, from the making of to the meanings of it, going through all the different movies, all the plots. There's a lot of material out there, and a lot of it is fantastic. I recommend all of it if you're a fan of the series like me. It's always interesting, it's always good stuff. I'm not trying to retread any of that. What we're going to do here is what the horror movie syllabus always does, which is look at the essential horror movies. So we're going to go through this entire series, movie by movie, and determine which movies are essential and which movies are not. Because even though I love this series, and I'd probably be willing to say that just about every one of them is essential. In reality, that's not necessarily the case. And for people who haven't watched the whole series and want to know, well, which ones should I watch? Maybe this list can help boil it down for you a little bit. Now, to be fair, this is a subjective list. This is basically my opinion. But hey, it's my channel. So, of course it's going to be my opinion. But I'm going to try to be objective. Again, I really love this series. It's second only to Friday the 13th for me. And so I'm inclined to love everything and say everything's essential and you got to check all of it out. I'm going to do my best to not do that here. I'm going to do my best to be objective and really think about the movies that you really should see or really need to see, and not the movies that are I just think are good or entertaining. As we go on, we'll also talk a little bit about the convoluted continuity of Halloween. It's way more convoluted than it is in Friday the 13th, like we talked about in that last video. And we'll touch on that because that has a direct bearing on the rankings of essential or not essential for each movie. So buckle up. It's going to be a complicated ride, especially if you're not familiar with the series, but I think we'll have a good time doing it. The first movie that we're going to look at is, of course, the original 1978 classic, Halloween. Directed by John Carpenter, Halloween is a bona fide classic. For those of you that are fans of the horror movie syllabus, you've heard me use that phrase before and you know what it means. It means that it is an essential movie, not just for this franchise, but for horror in general. You should see Halloween. Halloween is generally credited with starting the slasher boom that was largely in the 1980s, but persists to this day. And while it's not the first slasher, truly, and we talked about this a little bit in the Slasher Icons video, it does get the credit for that, and for good reason. A lot of what the formula is for a slasher, it originates with Halloween. It's a very well made movie. It's really creepy. To this day, it holds up extremely well. If you're a fan of Halloween, have some fun and watch people do reaction videos on YouTube to Halloween. It's a blast to see them discover it for the first time. The movie holds up for sure. It establishes the character of Michael Myers. It establishes the character of Laurie Strode, played by the legendary Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis. And so, for those reasons alone, it's already going to be essential watching for this series, for this franchise. But it also, again, those are household names. Michael Myers, Laurie Strode. Those are horror household names. So it's essential viewing for horror in general, not just the series, but definitely, definitely essential. The next movie that we're going to examine is Halloween 2. Now, Halloween 2 picks up exactly where Halloween left off. I mean, literally to the minute. It continues that night in 1978, but of course came out a couple of years later. So I try to ignore the bad wig on Jamie Lee Curtis. Um, but the movie is fleshes out the backstory of Michael Myers a bit, and 40-year-old spoiler alert here. It reveals that Michael Myers and Laurie Strode are actually siblings. Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' long lost sister. Um, and that is an important plot point that sets up several of the future movies that we're going to be talking about here. And you can debate whether or not that was a good move. There are people on both sides of that argument, but it is an important plot point for other movies. Um, it's a movie that I really enjoyed early on. In recent years, I've cooled on it quite a bit, but it really is. A fun thing that it continues on where the original movie left off, and it has that important plot development. Again, for better or for worse, it has that plot development that sets up so many of the other movies, and that's what makes it essential viewing. If you're trying to watch the series, and we're going to talk about how there are different ways to watch the series, but if you're trying to watch it, for most of them, you would need to see this movie in order to understand the series. So, is it essential? Yeah. Is it as good as the first one? Absolutely not. Is it one of the best? No, not really, but it is essential. The next movie we're examining is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And, you're probably seeing a trend here with the numbering. But the movie itself, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, did not follow the trend. It did not continue on the story of Michael Myers, much to the chagrin of many fans, including myself, who, when it came out, was very disappointed that Michael Myers was not in the movie. And that was part of the reason why the movie was not a hit, was kind of maligned. People did not like that it switched to an entirely different story, entirely different continuity, and just went its own way. I kind of personally feel like that would have worked really well for Halloween 2, but when you've done two Michael Myers movies and then the third one's not Michael Myers, it didn't work as well. And I was very unhappy about that. Now, in recent years, there's been a push to re-examine the movie on its own merits, and it's gotten a lot more love since then. There's a lot of people who really love this movie. Some people even say it's the best one. Slow down on that, but it's got a lot of fans now. So there's a lot of people who absolutely love this movie, and there's a lot of people who still really don't like it. And I'm probably somewhere in the middle. It's probably on the lower half of movies I like, but I don't hate it or anything like that. Now I take it for what it is. But is it essential? Absolutely not. It has nothing to do with Michael Myers. It has nothing to do with the series at all. It really is a standalone movie. It's only a Halloween movie in name. It has virtually nothing else to do with the other movies that we're going to talk about today. So you could completely ignore it. In fact, I'm going to be doing my Halloween marathon watching, and I have to fight the urge to skip it because it doesn't fit in at all. I kind of just want to not watch it, but I'm going to watch it because it's called Part Three, and so I like the OCD in me requires me to watch it. But is it essential viewing? No, not at all. Now I know that's going to probably be people are going to be unhappy about that. The people who love this movie are probably a little unhappy with that. But be honest with yourself. In terms of a Halloween franchise, this is the arguably the least essential Halloween movie in the Halloween franchise. So is it essential? Nope, not at all. Next Halloween movie we're looking at is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. And as the name of the movie suggests, the producers realize that the people want their Michael Myers, so let's get him back in there and let's let everybody know right up front he's back. And it's a welcome return, frankly. I really like Halloween 4, and I think a lot of people do. It goes without the Laurie Strode character, so there's no Jamie Lee Curtis in it. Instead, it focuses on her daughter, Jamie Lloyd, played by the wonderful Danielle Harris, who is absolutely fantastic in the movie as a child actor. And she's a big part of why I love this movie and why a lot of people love this movie. It's also a welcome return to form for Michael Myers. It's a lot of fun. It's got some great characters in it. It's not the most amazing or revolutionary horror film or slasher film that you'll ever see, but it's a lot of fun. Now, I'm on the fence on this one. Is it essential or not? I'm going to eke out a yes, that it's essential. But barely, and only because of how it sets up the next couple of movies. Uh, and also because of how it launches Danielle Harris's career. Danielle Harris, a bona fide scream queen. So there's some. I'm kind of giving some loose reasons why I'm going to call it essential. it could go either way on this one. It's right on the fence, to be honest with you. You could ignore this one. And the reason why you can ignore this one is because, as we'll see later on, it does get ignored. It literally gets cut out of continuity. And so there's the argument to say it's not essential. I'm going to give it an essential primarily because I really like it. In large part because of Danielle Harris, and seeing her early work is, I think, important. And also because they did build a mythology out of this that I think is noteworthy enough that you should at least see the first one, because if you see this one, you'll know whether or not you want to see more of it or not. Is I guess a good way of putting it. So we're gonna barely call it essential. The next movie, of course, is Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers. And, as I talked about in the previous one, they really knew where their bread was buttered here. They really knew that people wanted Michael Myers, so, like, his name's just gonna pop up in every title. And here's the thing, this movie, does not pick up right where number 4 leaves off, but it does continue the story. And maybe that's a bit of the problem, is it does pick up the thread where 4 leaves off, but it doesn't, it kind of retcons things a little bit, so it doesn't really deliver on the promise left by the ending of 4, which is fantastic. It really kind of sidesteps away from that, and that's bummer number 1. And then there's a bunch of other decisions in this movie that kind of take it away from what made 4 really good and make it subpar. And that's unfortunate. And there are other videos that can go into this way more than I can in terms of the quality of part 5 and where the issues lie with it, and stuff like that. But suffice to say, it's not it's not great. It's not it's not it goes in a direction that really undercuts the promise of 4, and as a result, I'm going to call it not essential. Again, I mentioned part 4 is barely essential because this entire 4, 5, and 6, this little trio of films, is not. In some situations, in some respects, is not actually in continuity anymore. This one's not essential. Even if you like 4, you could skip 5. In fact, a lot of people would recommend you do. 4 is, in my opinion, great. 5 is definitely not. So this one, can you skip it? Yeah, you absolutely can. The next movie that we're looking at is Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, aka Halloween 6, aka Halloween 666, aka other things. They had a lot of names for this one. Not only do they have a lot of names for this movie, they also had a lot of versions of it. There are actually multiple versions of this, but primarily the fans look at two different versions: the theatrical version, which I just held up, and the producer's cut. Um, Both of them kind of suck, frankly. Um, this is where you really delve into the backstory of Michael Myers. The last movie leaves on a bit of a cliffhanger that gets resolved in this movie, even though they didn't really know at the end of the part 5 what they were going to do. What they came up with is bizarre. It's, again, another time jump. It's still got Jamie Lloyd in it, but she's played by a different actress and she's older now. And Michael Myers is back to doing his Michael Myers thing, but now you've got a lot of mythology around him. And I mean mythology, actual mythology. And that is. Maybe it's kind of interesting. It's ambitious, I'll give you that. But you're demystifying the monster in the movie. And I'd argue every one of these movies, except for the first one so far, has demystified Michael Myers. But this one takes it several steps farther, in some really bizarre ways. Now, there are some things that are worth noting here. It's one. I think it's like the major screen debut of Paul Stephen Rudd. And that's a lot of fun alone. That's worth watching, maybe just for that. It's also the final performance for Donald Pleasance, played Dr. Loomis, legendary actor, and legendary character in the Halloween movies, and he is sorely missed. And unfortunately, he doesn't get much to do here, though. His role is almost perfunctory, and it's because he's in poor health. And again, with all the reshoots and everything like that, he wasn't available for some of it because he passed away. So it's a little understandable why, but it doesn't change the fact that his presence in the movie is wonky at best. But Paul Rudd and Donald Pleasance don't save this movie. It's not a good movie. It's definitely not an essential movie, especially if Part 5 is not essential. If you didn't see Part 5, don't even bother with Part 6 because you won't even know what's going on. Frankly, even if you saw Part 5, you might not know what's going on in Part 6. The movie is a mess. It's an interesting mess. If you're a diehard Halloween fan, you probably appreciate watching Part 6 and watching the different versions of Part 6 and really pulling them out. But and for the average fan, You can definitely skip part 6. You can skip part 5 and part 6. Arguably, you could skip part 4 too, but we'll get into that a little bit more in just a minute. But definitely, definitely not essential. The next Halloween movie we're examining is Halloween Water, aka Halloween H2O, aka Halloween 20 years later. And you can see where we're going with these names now, and I'll stop there. Halloween H2O came out shortly after Scream did. It's got the obvious Scream influences on there, which is not a bad thing. You've heard me talk in the past, if you watch the horror movie syllabus, about how Scream saved horror for me specifically and everybody in general. And I always like to point to Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, as the nadir of horror, where I was really starting to fall out of it. But Curse of Michael Myers was another one that I was really just kind of like, man, I think I'm done with all this. But Scream saved the day, and Halloween H2O really kind of went with that motif. It had like the hip '90s kids, and it had the rock soundtrack, such as it is, and it had kind of the postmodern feel to it, and like the comedy and everything like that. But it did it really well. I actually really like Halloween H2O quite a bit, in no small part because Jamie Lee Curtis returned to the franchise as Laurie Strode, and that was a huge boon to the series. She was sorely missed, and it was very important, especially with no Donald Pleasance. It was very important to have Laurie Strode back in, and it works really well. But what it does is arguably wipe out 4, 5, and 6 from the continuity. It basically has its own storyline about what happened to Laurie Strode, and she has a son in the movie, not a daughter. And so suddenly, 4, 5, and 6 are in a different continuity, most likely. There has been some debate that maybe they could still be in the same continuity. I tend to lean towards it's a separate continuity. It's its own thing. So if you're playing along at home, you've got 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Of course, 3 drops out because it's not really relevant to anything. And now you've got a new continuity that's 1, 2, and Halloween, well, 7, or Halloween H2O. And it worked really well, kind of ignoring the weird quagmire that 5 and 6 had created with the mythology of Michael Myers. That's gone now. Unfortunately, Jamie Lloyd as a character is also gone, but the new characters worked out fairly well. John, Laurie's son, works a pretty good, played by Josh Hartnett. I like Josh Hartnett. I think he's an underrated actor, so I enjoyed seeing him. And you've seen some other names. Michelle Williams, Academy Award nominee Michelle Williams, in there. LL Cool J, it's a blast. And there's good acting in there. It's a lot of fun, and it ends fantastic. It's a really good movie, and it took the film to the film franchise in what seemed to be going into a new, fresh direction. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and say it's essential. Again, partly because I like it and it's really good. Partly because it's the return of Jamie Lee Curtis in a very triumphant way, and partly just because it breathed new life into a franchise that, frankly, was probably on life support at this point. It was a big hit. It really revitalized everything, revitalized Michael Myers and the interest in Michael Myers, brought everything back full circle, brought me back into Halloween, just like bringing me back into horror with Scream. It really wound up being a breath of fresh air and very necessary in that sense. And as a result, we're going to go ahead and call this one essential. Now, the next Halloween movie we're going to look at is Halloween Resurrection, aka Halloween 8. And Halloween Resurrection is a sequel to Halloween H2O. It picks up where that movie left off, but not immediately where it left off. But the shocking ending, the shocking events at the end of Halloween H2O directly influenced the beginning of Halloween Resurrection. That's not necessarily a good thing, though, and I'm not going to spoil the movie for you. Jamie Lee Curtis is in the movie, sort of, and it does pick up with her story, but not in a really satisfying way, frankly. And then it goes into a new storyline with new characters that nobody really cares about. The movie is a bit of a mess. It really is an unnecessary movie that feels like a cash grab because it is, frankly, a cash grab. Halloween H2O made a lot of money. Halloween Resurrection did not because it was not good. It's actually pretty terrible, but it has Busta Rhymes in it. Busta Rhymes doing kung fu on Michael Myers, and that's amazing. This is definitely a so bad it's good horror movie. It's terrible. It's terrible. But every time Busta Rhymes is on the screen, which it should be awful, it should be colossally bad. It's a blast. It's a blast. He is ludicrous. He is ridiculous. He is so much fun. Not really intentionally, probably. They probably meant this to be a little bit more serious than it really is. It's a laugh. It's really funny. I have a blast with this movie. As a result, I'm going to rank these movies, I think, at the end of the video. And this one will be ranked a little higher than it should be simply because of Busta Rhymes. He's so much fun in the movie. The rest of the actors are largely forgettable, even though Katie Sackhoff's there, Tyra Banks is there. They're pretty much forgettable for the most part. The movie's trash. It's garbage. It's not good. And as a result, it's not essential. It's not essential at all. I may have a blast with it. I may just have like the guilty pleasure fun with it. But I'm not going to call it essential because of Busta Rhymes, not by any stretch of the imagination. The movie is not essential. Okay, the next Halloween movie we're talking about is now Rob Zombie's Halloween remake. Oh, look at that. It's a signed by Tyler Maine. Look at that. Yeah. Rob Zombie's Halloween is a remake of the 1978 Halloween by John Carpenter, and it is a very divisive film. And I talked about it recently in my horror remix video. So if you want a little bit more in depth review of it from my perspective, go check that video out. But high level, the movie goes into Michael's backstory as a child for the first half of the movie or so, exploring what made him a killer, frankly. And then the second half of the movie is just a straight retelling of the Carpenter movie. And it's got its fans and it's got its detractors, and the detractors are many, and they are vocal. They have very strong feelings about this movie. They feel like the explaining the origins of Michael Myers and the backstory that led to him being what he is undercuts Michael Myers and like removes his teeth, makes him not scary, which is true. It makes him less. It makes him less intimidating when you know that he's not the boogeyman. When you have an explanation for him, I would argue every single movie other than the first one did the same thing though, and for whatever reason, people don't hate those movies as much as they hate this one. But that is an argument or a discussion for another time. Um, what we're talking about here is whether or not it's essential, and it is not. As much as I like this movie, and I like this movie quite a bit, I thought it was an ambitious take to try to change the character of Michael Myers and make him a different kind of animal, a different kind of monster. Was ambitious and, while not 100% successful, really, really cool. I really liked a lot of what they did with this. It's not essential. It's a remake of the original. If you've seen the original, you don't need to see this one. In fact, most people would say, don't see this one at all, see the original. And they're not necessarily wrong. But there's no way I could call this an essential movie. Even though the next movie we're going to talk about, you would need to see this one before you see that one. Spoiler, that one's going to be not essential either. But yeah, this is not an essential movie. It's a remake. Obviously, it cannot be an essential movie because it's a remake. Even though, like I said, I like it. There's a lot of people who really like this movie. A lot more people who really hate this movie. But you can definitely skip it. And as promised, the next movie we're talking about is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And right off the bat, you already know this one's not essential because if the remake wasn't essential, the sequel to the remake certainly isn't going to be essential. But this movie goes beyond just not being essential. It is awful. It's borderline unwatchable to me, at least. I know it has some fans, but there's not that many. Not many people like raving about how good Halloween 2 is or that it's an underrated gem. Most people tolerate it at best, if out downright just can't stand it. And I'm one of those people. It's one of the rare Halloween movies or rare horror movies in general that while I was watching it in the theater was just like, what the hell am I watching? And being really disappointed, feeling really disappointed in the moment, not just reflecting on it later, going, you know what, that didn't satisfy as much as I wanted to. During the movie, going, I'm not happy with this movie. Really, really disappointing. Just an awful film. I try to give credit where credit's due. Like, it's an interesting take, kind of looking at the aftermath of Michael Myers' reign of terror. More on that in a second. It's an ambitious idea that just doesn't go over very well. Rob Zombie's like music video tendencies take over, and it becomes like this weird collage of bizarre nightmare images that are not bad. Aesthetically, doesn't it looks good. It's a visually interesting movie. Just narratively, it's a mess. It's all over the place. I don't know what the hell's going on, and it's slow. It's not very interesting at all. And so that's the problem. It is an interesting idea to tackle that never really pays off at all. Definitely not essential and not worth your time, if I'm being honest with you. If there was one movie to skip in the Halloween franchise, even more so than part three, I'd say skip this one. Part three has nothing to do with anything, but part two of the remake, the sequel remake, is it's that part three is the least entertaining. You might have a good time with it. Part two, you're not gonna have a good time. You're just not. So not essential, not worth your time. Don't watch it. Next up is Halloween 2018. And it's something that people have talked about before, and I've known, but I didn't really absorb this until I did this video right now, is how terrible the naming conventions are in the Halloween series. Like, we literally have three movies called Halloween that are very different. Um, but this Halloween 2018 is a direct sequel to Halloween 1978. It could have been called Halloween H40, if you will, Halloween 40 years later. And it picks up 40 years after the 1978 original, and once again stars Jamie Lee Curtis, reprising her role as Laurie Strode, and it wipes out everything in between. No Halloween 2, where Laurie is Michael's sister. No Season of the Witch. No Daniel Lloyd. No Josh Hartnett. No Rob Zombie. None of it. All of it's gone. No Busta Rhymes. All of it's gone. And they do it in one elegant line by explaining that those are just stories that somebody made up. And continuity Victor is very happy with that line, because I get really annoyed about franchises that don't really have very good continuity. It does bug me. It takes me out of it a little bit. With one line, they explained it all away from me, like the Star Wars Legends kind of thing. Like, no, those stories are just things that people made up there. They don't not exist, but they're not continuity. They're not canon. Great, I'm on board. And this movie is fun. This movie is really good. I loved this movie. Now, I know not everybody is effusive about it, but generally speaking, people seem to really like this movie. It was a big hit, and most of the fans seem to really like this one quite a bit. So I'm not alone in this. But not everybody shares my extreme joy of this movie, but I really love this movie. Now, it is not perfect. It is not without its flaws. There is, in particular, one plot twist in the movie that is almost derails the movie. It's really pretty bad, but it doesn't derail the movie. The movie winds up being great overall. It's a return to form for Michael Myers, a return to form of him as the Shape, as the mysterious killing machine that kills without reason, without logic, and that is wonderful. It's the first movie since the first movie to keep that mystery about Michael alive and not try to over-explain him. And it is a welcome return to horror form. I absolutely love this movie, and I'm going to call it essential, not only because of how good it is, and because it's a kind of return to the roots of Michael Myers, but also because, quite honestly, you could literally just watch the original and this, and that's it. You could just watch those two movies, and that's it. And in fact, there's many people who suggest that that's all you do is watch those two movies. Can't argue with them on that. It really would work. I think it's a richer experience to watch these other movies, but you could just skip from 1978 to 2018 and call it a day and be good. Also, though, they are doing some sequels to this as we speak. And so, is it essential for those movies? Yeah, it's going to be essential to see this movie to see how the sequels pan out. So, calling it essential for a couple of reasons, but ultimately, it's just really great. If you like the 1978 original, you're probably going to like this one as well. So, it's a high recommend as well as being an essential movie. And the next Halloween movie we're going to talk about is Halloween Kills, and I don't have a DVD for it because, as the time of this recording, it came out yesterday, and I just saw it yesterday. And the movie does pick up right where Halloween 2018 leaves off, which is a nice return to like the Halloween 2 from 1980 or 81. That followed right after the 1978 Halloween. It's a nice homage or throwback to that idea. And of course, continuity Victor really appreciates stuff like that. Now, Halloween Kills was good. I really liked the movie. It's not great, though. I want to manage expectations on this if you haven't seen it. It's good, but it's not great. It's somewhere in the middle for me in terms of like you'll see when I rank them, I'm going to put this middle, high middle, but middle. And the reason why is twofold. One is it's really ambitious. It's got a lot going on in there and maybe too much for the runtime. And two is there's another movie coming out, Halloween Ends, that's coming out, I think, next year. And it's clearly going to get resolved in that movie. So this movie feels a little bit unfinished. It doesn't feel like cliffhanger, like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 kind of thing. It just feels like it's not 100% resolved. It doesn't feel like a complete movie necessarily. And so because of that unresolved nature of it, I'm going to go ahead and give it not essential, at least for now. And kind of on the fence on this one too, because it's quite good, and it's got some really interesting stuff in there that I do think is going to be essential to the next movie. And so this is the one where maybe we'll revisit it when Halloween Ends comes out next year. It might change my perspective on this one. I might view it in a slightly different lens. But in my fresh, just having seen it 24 hours ago lens, not essential. And it is, again, it's not a perfect movie. It's good. It's entertaining. I had a fun time with it. It's overly ambitious. It's got maybe a little too much fan service in there. Some of that just didn't land for me, and I love fan service, so I'm big on that. But it had its flaws, and I noticed the flaws. Whereas 2018's flaws, I was able to gloss past them because I was having such a good time. Halloween Kills, it held me up a little bit. That said, overall, really enjoyed it. And I would say, somebody who's a Halloween fan, would I recommend it to them? Yeah, probably would recommend it to them. But is it essential viewing? No, you could technically skip it. You could technically skip it. You could just leave 2018 where it is. Halloween 2018 has a great ending, and you could just stop there if you really wanted to. I would say keep going because Halloween's great, but you could stop there. So Halloween Kills, not essential, but worth the time. Okay, so that's it for our exploration into the Halloween franchise, movie by movie. And just to recap, here are the movies that we're saying are essential viewing for Halloween, for the Halloween franchise. Part one, of course. Part two, because it establishes the Laurie Strode familial connection. Part four, but barely, mostly for Danielle Harris. H2O, because I think it saved the franchise. And Halloween 2018, because it follows so nicely from the original and is such a good movie. So that's it. Five. Five of the movies, five of the 11 movies now so far are considered essential viewing for the Halloween franchise. It's not bad. You can do five movies and get a feel for this franchise. You feel like you got the Halloween experience. So it's a very doable thing. And I feel like it's a fairly balanced and fair assessment. I didn't throw everything in there that I love just because I love it. So those are your five essential Halloween movies. Now, I promise I'd do this, and I know a lot of people like this, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to rank the Halloween movies in my personal preference of what I like them best, and let you know what I think are the best, and then all the way down to the least best. And if you've been paying attention, you probably know where I'm going with this. So, of course, the first one's going to be the best for sure, followed closely by 2018. Then I'm going to go with H2O. I really liked H2O. Then I'll do part four because Danielle Harris, I love her. She's great in that movie. Then I'll go ahead and do Halloween Kills, and that's where I'm going to get a little shaky. I just saw it, so I'm not sure, but I'm gonna shuffle it in right there above Rob Zombie's Halloween at the fifth spot because I do think Halloween Kills. I like that continuity better than Rob Zombie's continuity, but I do like Rob Zombie's Halloween, so I'm gonna put Halloween by Rob Zombie at number six. Then I'll put Halloween 2. Then Halloween 7 because it's Busta Rhymes, and I love me some Busta Rhymes. Then I'll put part 5 just because it's not very good. Part 3 because it doesn't have Michael Myers. Then part 6 because part 6 is just a colossal mess. No matter which version you watch, it's a colossal mess. And then last and certainly least, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So yeah, those are my rankings. That's my personal opinion of what I feel like the Halloween movie rankings are. I'd love to hear what your rankings are. I know that you'll have a different opinion than me. You'll think I'm ridiculous in some of these things. Rob Zombie's too high. Resurrection's too high. Halloween 3's too low. Great. Let us know. Tell us what your rankings are and tell us why. In the comments below because I'd like to hear them. And also let me know which Halloween movies you think are essential and which ones are not. Was I too liberal in giving essential grades out to the movies, or was I not liberal enough? Did I leave out some movies that you feel are essential, that you feel are important enough that need to be watched? Let us all know in the comments below because those are the people who are not familiar with Halloween will rely on your input just as much as mine. So go down to those comments and let us know your thoughts as well. Thank you very much for indulging me as I dive into the Halloween franchise. It's one of my absolute favorite franchises, not just in horror, but period. So I really enjoyed getting a chance to take a quick, deeper dive into the movies and talk about them one by one, since we don't usually get that opportunity in the syllabus when it comes to franchises. So thanks again for joining me, for giving us input in the comments, for your support, your liking and subscribing and all that stuff. I really appreciate you guys who have subscribed. You guys mean the world to me. So thanks again very much for all of that. And until next week, class dismissed.